the government is at times required to seek out votes, so they don't talk very well and they don't negotiate very well. Mr Brumby has not spoken to us in the whole time we've been in Parliament, and I find that a bit odd. So we need to break down that, and we need to have the government accepting that they actually do need to speak to us. I think what we do best in Parliament is question and query and move amendments and making sure that legislation does not pass without the community sector knowing that it exists, because there are times when I'm shocked that I ring up whoever I know will know about the need for this legislation and say, I've got this bill, you know, what's your consultation been with the government? I didn't know the bill existed. It hasn't been out of the draft exposure. So those kinds of things, making sure that the sector is absolutely included in our decisions about how to deal with it. And campaigning on the outside of Parliament is a vital role, I think. So I think we have dual roles. It's in the Parliament, it's outside the Parliament, and it's opening the doors of the Parliament to make sure the community sector and the community in general have access.
Okay. And now we noticed in material from the Greens that there's one or two machinery of government changes that you support, and we were just looking at, for instance, your support for moving the Office of Youth into Department of Premier and Cabinet. I suppose, what's your perspective on machinery of government changes? Obviously, after elections, we tend to get them. What's the basis on how you'd support that? Why would you support particular machinery of government changes at a particular time or with a particular rationale?
Yeah, our decision on those kinds of issues would be talking to the sector. Is having a particular topic or area of interest in a particular department working. One of the things that's come up during this election is disability needs its own minister. Lisa Neville has got disability, drug and alcohol, mental health and child protection. That's huge. Each one of those areas seniors actually needs their own, at least cabinet secretary or their own minister, because it's just too big. And so it's those kinds of things. How do you change that but also keep it whole of government all at the same time? So, and I've found in my 4 years in Parliament, I'm not surprised by it, but people don't actually speak to each other, and even sometimes in departments they don't speak to each other. I'm sure you've encountered that once or twice yourself.
All right, so now we're on to our final theme, which is, again, it's around the role of the Greens. We're all Australian. We've all seen what happened with the federal election and the hung Parliament and the negotiations. Yes. And we're yet to see whether we're going to have 3 weeks of waiting after this weekend, or whether it's all clear by 7:30 on Saturday night. But in terms of a couple of hypothetical scenarios,
I love hypotheticals.
Yes. So in the event of a hung Parliament, but with Mr Baillieu in a position to form a coalition government, but requiring Green support to do so in order to have the numbers at the lower or the upper house level, how would the Greens approach this?
All the tricky questions. Mr Baillieu's made it pretty clear he doesn't want to deal with us, nor did he want to preference us. So I think his position is quite clear. Our position is that we would be wanting to negotiate with someone who has progressive policies, especially around things like industrial relations, community sector needs, law and order, climate change. I'm not sure which party is going to be able to fulfil that at this stage, and maybe what actually should be happening is the Labor Party should be talking to the Liberal Party about forming coalition, because now that they've preferenced each other, maybe it's becoming a bit clearer just how close they are to each other. And as a final remark, a vote for the Greens is a vote for the Greens in this election.
So in the event of a hung Parliament with Mr Brumby being in a position to negotiate, and if Mr Brumby wanted to negotiate with the Greens, and there were enough Greens to make it necessary for him to do so, what would be the non-negotiables on the list?
I think a lot of the things we've talked about today are the non-negotiables. It would be around accommodation for people with disabilities, support for families, accommodation for people on lower incomes. It's about making Victoria a fairer place, that we look at inclusion of everybody, not just people who have the means to acquire. That they're the kinds of things that would be the priorities. But we don't have a list yet. We don't have a negotiation list. I think every candidate's probably got their own little list in their head, but at this stage.
So if you had the opportunity to do that, how would it work? What would be the process within the Greens to decide and negotiate on what that list would be?
You know, we haven't actually got that far yet, and I know that that may sound strange, but we're just wanting to get over the election. And on Sunday morning, if we have any sense about what has actually happened, there will be a meeting of candidates who may have won, or MPs or MLCs, and start talking about how that's going to happen. And I would think that would happen pretty quickly. It would probably be Sunday or Monday, and we'll be drawing up a list and, you know, looking for advice as well. Because, you know, it's what the Greens do. We look for advice from the people in the various sectors who actually know about these things.
So, Colleen, that's the end of our questions.
Yes.
Is there anything else in terms of the Greens platform that you think VCOSS members should be aware of or thinking about?
I think what they should do is read all of them, and we do have a lot of them. And I think what's been really good for us in this election period is that the advice we've received from people, the surveys, we've now done about 100 surveys back to various groups, and it has really highlighted for us what our commitment should be going into the next 4 years, and the things that are required to make Victoria a good place.
Okay, thank you very much, Colleen Hartland. All the very best for the weekend.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll keep talking.